to bear.
Despite all odds, the problem did resolve itself. Not long after I moved out, my grandfather, who lives in a separate house on the same farm, came home to find police cars in his driveway. An officer approached him and asked if he owned another house on the farm, as he needed to speak to the landlord about his tenants. The house in question is occupied by a late relative's widow who has a lifetime estate. My grandfather explained that the property is part of the farm, which is owned collectively by him and his daughters. Because of this, he was permitted knowledge of what happened there. The officer explained everything. Apparently, the widow, who is quite old and infirm, used the death of my relative as an excuse to move in her chronically unemployed family, among them her daughter, her son-in-law's brother, and her nephew. Because they don't own their own separate cars and we seldom visit the widow, she stinks and is generally unlikable, so we socially distance around her before the pandemic ever even began. This transition went undetected. Shortly before my grandfather had returned home that day, the police responded to a 911 call from the widow. All we were told is that the nephew was becoming violent. When the police arrived, they realized there was an outstanding warrant for his arrest. The nephew was hiding from the law at the widow's house. This is the reason his presence was concealed from us on the rare occasions that the widow was outside of her home and we spoke. He was removed from the home and arrested by the officers. Ever since then, there has been no strong chemical odor outside and no knocking on the window late at night. We suspect he was aware of this farm long before moving in, and it was his go-to spot for recreational drug use. The widow is around 80 years old and had her first child at approximately 13 with her first spouse, so her nephew is elderly himself and would have likely been doing drugs and playing his Pink Floyd music here 21 years, too. We're thinking he would occasionally spend the night at the widow's house over the years and walk towards the fields near us. It makes sense that we never heard a car accompanying the knocking noises because he doesn't own a car, and the house is not far since it's a part of the farm.